unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, the production of Souls and Liberty. 41 days to go, and Kamala has really stepped in a pile of Catholic you-know-what.
We're disappointed. We were looking forward to giving the vice president an enthusiastic welcome. And we were confident that she would find this. You know, she speaks very much about the high ideals and how it's good to get away from division and come together in unity and all. Well, that's what the L. Smith dinner is all about. We haven't given up yet. We're not used to this. We don't know how to handle it. This hasn't happened in 40 years since Walter Mondale turned down the invitation. And remember, he lost 49 out of 50 states. I don't want to say there's a direct connection there. But so we're not used to this, and we're not giving up. You know who's been a help to us, Lauren, is Senator Schumer and Governor Hochul. They both are working hard to see that they convince her to come.
So there's still a chance.
Yeah, and Senator Schumer said to me, he said, I don't think she made the decision. I think her schedulers are saying she can't make it. So we're not giving up. We hope she's there.
Not good for Kamala when a Catholic cardinal is politely mocking her, because that's what that was, especially the cardinal in the media capital of the world.
There's just a long history of anti-Catholic measures that she openly backs, and it tells us all we need to know about Kamala Harris.
There probably is an element of just pure cowardice. I mean, let's be real. This is someone who hasn't done press conferences, hasn't done debates, who's been shying away from all of this stuff for a very long time.
Joining us today are Arthur Claro and Stephen Wynn, fellow Souls and Liberty contributors. I'm your host, Gary Michael Voris, coming to you from here in Houston. Stephen, Cardinal Dolan, kind of mocking Kamala.
Yes, and rightfully so. Kamala's refusal to attend the Al Smith dinner is a blatant snub of U.S. Catholic voters, and it really punctuates her long history of anti-Catholicism. I think against that backdrop, her refusal to attend really should be the final nail in the coffin of any form of Catholic support for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it's the only Catholic support there is fake Catholic support. Art, your thoughts? Cardinal Dolan, I mean, you know, as people might know, I've had quite a few problems with him over the years, but to sort of stand there at a microphone in front of the New York media and kind of scoff at her, that's kind of a big deal.
I mean, when you get roasted by a priest, that's another level, isn't it? It really does raise a question, though. Why? Why is she not going? Is she scared? Does she just hate Catholics that much? It's a lot to question about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff behind this and behind the scenes stuff. There was a conference call with the Kamala campaign yesterday with James Carville. We're going to get into that a little bit in just a moment. First, just want to ask for your continued support again. Please just feel free to click on that donate button if you like what we do here. We do stories here, and we do them a certain way that no one else in the political media does. So we want to say thank you for all of our current supporters and invite those of you who may not be. If you like this kind of conversation, this level, please click on that donate button. Gentlemen, the Harris-Biden administration, notice how I flipped that, see what I did there? The Harris-Biden administration has targeted Catholics almost from day one, even before, actually. There was the grilling. Kamala, when she was a senator, applied to a judicial nominee saying he was unfit for office, judicial office, because he was a member of the Knights of Columbus. That's just to name one item. And again, that's while she was still in the Senate. Stephen, I mean, does she, you know, it's Art's question, does she just hate Catholics? I mean, you know, it seems like there's a lot more going on here. I mean, you could at least just ignore them, but to kind of actively go after us Catholics is like, WTF, lady.
Well, yeah, I think it just comes back to the fact that this is a holy war. As we've been saying, it's a clash of worldviews, Christianity versus communism. And yeah, back in 2018, she tried to torpedo the bid of Brian Bisher for the federal bench. He was a Trump nominee. And in trying to take him down, she demonized the Knights of Columbus, of which he was a member, as an all-male society, made up primarily of Catholic men. Well, duh, as if there's, something wrong with that. and she characterized their pro-life views, their pro-family views as, quote, extremist. Yeah. And so essentially she was advocating for a religious test for public office. And, there's no question that Kamala Harris doesn't want faithful Catholics in public office because, again, we hold completely different worldviews as compared to her, and we oppose her agenda. She opposes ours. And it wasn't just the Knights of Columbus scandal, basically. She has a long history of supporting anti-Catholic legislation. For example, as a senator, she backed the Do No Harm Act, which would have forced Catholic doctors to perform abortions, to essentially violate their consciences to keep their jobs. She also supported the Equality Act, which would have forced Catholic organizations, parishes included, to hire gays, transgenders, and anyone really who openly flouted church teaching on human sexuality. Beyond that, as vice president, she was part of the Biden decision to proclaim Easter Sunday, the holiest day in the Christian calendar, a transgender day of visibility. And she also backed the flying of the pride flag outside the U.S. Embassy in Rome, again, just blocks away from St. Peter's Basilica, essentially just giving a finger to the Pope, to God himself. Also earlier this year, she and Biden basically banned the Knights of Columbus from holding a Memorial Day Mass at Arlington National Cemetery. That was ultimately allowed to go ahead because of the threat of legal action. But there's just a long history of anti-Catholic measures that she openly backs, and it tells us all we need to know about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I mean, you can't name off in that extensive list. Thank you. You can't name off one thing she's actually done for Catholics at all. Arthur, I mean, she's got a Catholic problem. She really does.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is probably a very strategic move on her part, because as some other commentators have pointed out, some other Catholic commentators, there's really not much for her to win by going to this event. Sitting beside the Cardinal would just raise questions amongst her supporters about why she's not fighting him over abortion and his position on abortion or different policies like that. And so all that she really would get by going there is either undermining her supporters, undermining the urgency with which she's rallying them to vote for her, not to mention standing beside the greatest threat to modern society, according to her, and batting around witty banter with him. How does that look if your entire campaign is this guy is the worst thing that's ever come on earth? This is literally the Antichrist, if she would use that kind of phrasing. And here I am just making jokes. Doesn't really work that way. Yeah,
it wouldn't be good for her image of he's the existential threat to democracy and the end of the world and all of that stuff. Plus, I think they've probably gone back and looked at those tapes from the 2016 Al Smith dinner. And, Hillary got up there and made some kind of dad type jokes. But Trump roasted her and they weren't really jokes. So I think they might be afraid of that. And, the event's sold out. It's sold out all the time. Got to wonder how they're probably going, it's probably not good for us to go to this. Probably not good. We'll take our chances with being labeled anti-Catholic as opposed to going up there and being roasted, and sort of proven to be anti-Catholic. Take a little quick break here, folks. We'll be right back in just a few seconds, but check this out. And we're going to be back. And we're going to be talking about how the Biden-Harris administration was targeting Catholics in their parishes right after this. No matter who wins in November, we have to embrace that we are living in a post-Christendom culture. And the heart of that is a rejection of the gospel. As one item on our agenda to combat this, Souls and Liberty is hosting our first annual retreat at sea. You might be familiar with the annual event we produced for over 10 years at Church Militant. Dr. Jules Gomez, our Rome correspondent, and I are going to be doing the presenting, and the theme is Christians in Exile Triumphing in Adversity, which provides a whole range of discussions to think about. Now, we sail out of Galveston, Texas to the Western Caribbean November 10th, to the 17th, yes, right after the election. I think all of us are probably going to need it one way or the other. Please join us for serious discussion, spiritual preparation, and bonding. Very important, bonding with fellow Catholics. Registration information is provided below and on our site at soulsandliberty.com/retreat@sea 2024. So sign up, and we hope to see you there. All right, if you're not signing up for that, please do. Be a great time. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the targeting of Catholics in their parishes, undercover FBI agents. You know, you say some of this stuff, guys, I'm saying it. I can't believe what I'm actually saying. I've been in the news for 40 years, and I'm actually reporting that FBI put agents to spy on Catholics in Catholic parishes around the country under the pretense that we Catholics are dangerous to the state. Stephen, this is actually what's going on.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, a brave new world that we're living in these days. On one hand, it's just absurd. I frequent the traditional Latin Mass pretty often, not exclusively, but quite often. And every traditional Catholic that I know, they're interested in having children, raising healthy families, trying to get ahead in life as they're taking care of their spiritual life. And they many of them are very politically aware, politically active, but they want to change the system. They want to change the regime at the ballot box, not on the firing range, basically. And so it's just the characterization that traditional Catholics could be a threat to the country is just absurd. On the other hand, beyond that, it's ominous. It's absolutely ominous. This is the kind of stuff that you read about happening in the Eastern Bloc under communism. It's the kind of thing that's happening in China even today. It's just really unsettling to think that this is the direction America is heading under the communist Democrat regime.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, that's exactly it. In response to Kamala saying, I'm not going to go, or the campaign saying, well, we're going to skip that event or whatever it was. Trump had an absolute, as he should have, absolute field day with it on his Truth Social. We want to put up just a little part of how he responded. Take a look at this right here. He said, I don't know what she has against our Catholic friends, but it must be a lot because she certainly hasn't been very nice to them. In fact, Catholics are literally being persecuted by this administration. Any Catholic that votes for Comrade Kamala Harris should have their head examined. I think that's the least that should happen to them. Art, what do you think? I mean, that's Trump. I mean, they're having a field day with this. It's like she can't get out of her own way. So what do you think is all this? Why is emanating from Democratic Party, general, but specifically Kamala and her campaign, what is all this anti-Catholic stuff? And again, it's not Christians in general so much. It certainly is that, but it's more specifically Catholic.
A great question. I have to wonder if it's because Catholics seem to be slightly more organized than maybe the general Christians are. There's more of a unifying thread there. There's more community there in a lot of cases as well. And I think in general, really what it comes down to is what Stephen was saying. This is typical communist, ways of operating. This is just very, very typical. I was actually thinking as Stephen was saying what he just said, I wonder how all the old Cold Warriors from the United States and from the West would feel if they saw this happening right now.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what they'd be thinking, considering they fought for so long against this. They fought across the world against this. And here we are, every single Western nation, but particularly America, is going full bore communist. It's just bizarre if you think about it in the context of history.
Yeah, I want to say it's Nikita Khrushchev pounding his shoe on the podium. That's sort of the symbol of it. That's not exactly what happened, about the "we will bury you" comment, but it's a good symbol for all this because in the reality, that's what's going on. With the exception of the Bush-Gore race in 2000, no candidate has won the White House without a majority of the Catholic vote. So, Art, this whole Al Smith dinner thing seems to be absolutely insane from a political strategy point of view. Final thoughts, you first.
Yeah, well, I think like we said earlier here, I think she feels like she has very little to gain. The Catholics who are going to vote for her are going to vote for her regardless. The Catholics who are not regardless. And all this proves, if she does go there, is it undermines the urgency of her message. That being said, I think there probably is an element of just pure cowardice. I mean, let's be real. This is someone who hasn't done press conferences, hasn't done debates, who's been shying away from all of this stuff for a very long time. And if I could just say one more thing, this is to the Trump campaign. I think that a wise approach to this, maybe with one or two jabs at her not being there, would be just to use that time to put forward his agenda for Catholics and how he will help Catholics, as opposed to taking too much time knocking her. Because again, those who recognize it, they're already not going to vote for. In fact, Catholics are already majority leaning towards Trump anyways. So
yeah,
he just needs to deliver
52, 53% of the Catholic vote. That's hard to overcome. And again, like we covered in yesterday's show, there are more of those Catholics, that percentage, in those battleground states. I guess at this point, it's just, her record and her stuff catching up to her, and couldn't happen to a nicer. Stephen, bring us home. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting. She ostensibly, her reason for not attending the dinner was because she wants to focus on swing states. Well, a lot of those swing states, if not most of them, have a very sizable percentage of Catholic voters. So yeah, it's just interesting, her decision not to attend. Returning to Art's point earlier, I think that this is just kind of just another page out of a communist playbook. Anti-Christian playbook. Like if you look back, historically, Charles Darwin, when he was pushing the theory of evolution, it was not in the name of science. It was actually in the name of faith. It was to advance his atheistic worldview, and he specifically spoke of the Catholic Church, not the Church of England, but the Catholic Church being the greatest impediment, according to his view, to progress, to getting his worldview established. Basically, it was the same thing in the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin. It wasn't the Orthodox Church, although he slaughtered thousands and thousands of Orthodox priests, nuns, prelates. It was the Catholic Church Joseph Stalin recognized as being the greatest threat to him achieving his aims. I think it's just more of the same today in America in 2024 with the Communist Democrats.
Yeah, and the problem this time around is the church is in something of a weak position, at least in its leadership ranks, as we can see by the fact that, although, got to say, I don't think I would ever, you want to know how weird things are? I don't think you would ever have said, I could never have imagined a world where I'd be saying kudos to Cardinal Dolan. But, he kind of cracked a dad joke with Kamala on the receiving end of it. All right, man, 41 days to go. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your great analysis, as always. Thanks again. Closing thought here, Democrats have transformed into the Communist Party USA, and a huge part of that transformation is rejection of God, manifested in a hatred of Christianity in general, but a specific enmity, a loathing of Catholicism. Every time communists show up, the church is persecuted, meaning the Catholic Church. When Antonio Gramsci founded the Italian Communist Party a century ago, he specifically named and identified that the Catholic Church's influence on the culture would have to be broken before communism could be globally dominant. He wasn't talking about just Italy. It didn't take very long, in fact, for shots to be fired by the popes once socialism, which again is really communism, showed up on the scene in the mid to late 19th century. Gramsci went to Moscow and warned Stalin that overthrowing a culture or a nation by violence might work for a bit, but would not last. Turns out Gramsci was right. The Soviet Union was gone after about 70 years. But Gramsci's method of a slow, methodical undoing of Catholic mores and social teaching about the family and sex has devastated the West, truly unmooring the culture from morality. Even though it wasn't Gramsci who coined the term, it still applies. It's been a long march through the institutions, more than 100 years. Protestants in America today simply do not realize that even though they had doctrinal differences with Catholicism back in the day, they, Protestants, still lived their day-to-day lives in accordance with Catholic teachings in the area of morality. Abortion, divorce and remarriage, unheard of practically. Contraception was actually against the law. Promiscuity, unwed mothers, cohabitation, and on and on and on. None of this was really a thing, certainly nothing like today. Catholics and Protestants alike understood, at least fundamentally, the natural law. They understood the natural law, and they lived accordingly. And it was the Catholic Church that fashioned Western civilization around that same natural law. Unlike Stalin, Gramsci understood this and also understood it would take a very long time to undo what the Catholic Church had constructed over 1,500 years. Here we are now, today, in the midst of the collapse of all of that, and it's coming down to one single election with the communists very, very close to seizing that brass ring they have been reaching for a century. They've spent decades producing an emotionally unstable society and turning them into voters so that the ballot box will be their weapon. If they are successful, that depends on you. Be sure and vote and get others to vote, because if they win, you won't ever get to vote again. As the saying goes, once you vote communists in, the only alternative is to shoot your way out. God love you. I'm Gary Michael Voris.